Hello, everyone. Looks like everything is working all at once, which never happens, so maybe that is a good omen. Hello, hello. Welcome, Adna Marianor. Happy birthday. It's actually only a couple weeks away from my birthday. Oh, no. Hello, Paul, Lobsoul, Natasha, Miguel, Alexis. Welcome, one and all, to the Gaming Awards. If you don't know, last night was I don't know how long they've been doing it. It was the Gaming Awards last night, which I did not watch for many reasons. One of which being was I forgot it was on TV. But also I just wasn't going to watch anyway. I did watch last year and I did live stream it, which was fun. Sephiroth was announced for Smash, which was cool. But this year they didn't have any Smash announcements, so it was obviously useless. But I thought it would be fun to do my own awards for video games. The problem I noticed very quickly when I looked up what video games came out this year was I only played one new game this year, and that was Resident Evil Village. So I guess my default best game of this year is Resident Evil Village. Which I was thinking really hard, like, nope, all the other games. I've not bought anything else right out of the gate. I just haven't played much new stuff this year, which is fine. So I decided I'd do general my favorite games and talk about why they're my favorite. Hello, Joe, Billy, Uranium. Yes, I know everybody's talking about what was said at the awards, but I'm not getting any hopes. I'm not thinking about it until there's actually, all the hints and the winks at the camera. I don't take that seriously. It could all just be marketing or goofing or what have you. I'm not interested, but I'm happy for folks that are excited about it. Anyway, let's get on with the show and talk about my favorite video games. I think I have 10, maybe. I am skipping not Final Face. Freudian slip. I'm skipping Silent Hill because I talk about that series all the time on this channel, and I think folks know that I like it. So I'm just going to talk about other stuff that I don't get to talk about as much. RE Village really is Game of the Year, though. It was really great. I don't know if if I had played, like, Shin Megami Tensei 5 is so my thing. I feel like it would have been my game of the year. Fatal Frame 5 as well also really got my alley. I probably would have enjoyed them a lot, but I didn't have, you know, the time or money. They both came out within, like, a week of each other. I was out of town. So I'm hoping I'll get to play those in January. That's my thought. I did not hear about the Toyama announcing a game with Yamaoka. That is cool that those two are... Now, that's cool news. I am happy about the two of them working together on something. But until we actually see what that is, which I think they said 2022 was we'd see actual info on the game. I am excitedly watching his stuff. I am very excited about all that. Hello, folks joining us. So, let's get to my... Where'd my slideshow go? Here we go. Okay, start easy. Best soundtrack. My favorite soundtrack in video games. I listen to video game music all the time. I listen to, like, the orchestral music because it helps me think, it helps me write, you know, that kind of stuff. And I find myself going back to specific soundtracks all the time. And Final Fantasy's on there, Kingdom Hearts is on there. I've got some Pokemon songs, Undertale. But the one I think that really just moves me the most, Jesus, is Chrono Trigger. Chrono Trigger was originally an SNES game? I'm honestly not sure. I played the remake on the DS, and it is an old Square game. It's like a pixelated game where you play as this character. Was his name Chrono? His name was Chrono. Where you travel in time, and you travel into the future, and the past, into this and that, and figure out this problem that has to be solved by time travel, and you and all your friends go on this great adventure, and you save the world. But the music! I mean, the game itself is a classic, and it's fantastic, and you should try it if you've never played it, but the music is just transportative. It immediately gets me there. I actually had the theme song as my ringtone for a long time, and it just sounds like you're going on a great adventure. The music that plays when the time portal opens for the first time and the characters fall through, and it just takes you there, and it makes you feel like you're about to go on this great epic journey. And music does so much to make video games and to make stories feel powerful, and Chrono Trigger just does it so good. It just does it the best. It is the best example in my mind of the music and the concept being so perfectly intertwined that the two of them are one. The experience is so much greater for how well they work together. Best soundtrack of all time. I love it. All right. SMT5 is a masterpiece gameplay-wise and aesthetically, but falls a little in other departments, unfortunately. See, that's the problem. SMT has that issue, and I'm not sure how they're going to fix it. I've played 3 and I've played 4, and both have that thing where gameplay, aesthetics, world, I love it, but there's just this lack of focus that I think that the series suffers from a little bit. And I don't know what they're going to do to fix that. I'll be curious to see how 5 compares to 4 and to 3. But yeah, we'll have to see. Let's see, what was my next one? Best role-playing game. My favorite role-playing game is Final Fantasy X. I actually think of it as the first video game I ever played, because I'm sure it might have been Spyro or Pokemon, but I have very vivid early memories of playing Final Fantasy X with my brother when I was like 7, 8? Yeah, I would have been 8. It is a Final Fantasy game set in a Eastern style. I think Thailand was a heavy influence. A set of islands that you explore, trying to get rid of this terrible monster named Sin, and it's just so full of beautiful world building, the aesthetics, like... The gameplay was really different from past Final Fantasies, but for me, it really exemplified the most fun I have with a Final Fantasy. Every game in the series kind of tweaks the combat, but 10's is the best in my opinion. I just really love the way that it works. But what hits me hard with 10 more than any of the others is the entire package of the world building, the characters, like the experience of it. To this day, it's heavily influenced my own way of writing and world building and how it shows you the world. Because your main character is from another place. He doesn't know anything about this world. So the game has you interacting with the world as if you know, because you as the player don't know anything, but you as the character are also ignorant. And so it has a really great way of not holding your hand, but kind of highlighting things and going, hey, here's why this is, here's why that is, and really interesting and really lovely ways. Yes, laughing lessons. People make fun of that scene, but I love it. It's so genuine and dorky and stupid. It just reminds me of all this, like, the ways when people are attracted to each other and falling for each other, how stupid they can be, and to them, they're in their own little world. And it feels so good and natural and real to them, but everybody else is like, what's happening here? It's a lovely story. It moved me to tears. I cosplayed as Yuna for like 10 years of my life. I was obsessed. I am obsessed. That's not past tense. I have like 8 Final Fantasy books in Japanese, Final Fantasy X. Posters, figurines. I'm obsessed with the game. It is my favorite. I know everybody that likes the series has their own personal best Final Fantasy, but 10 is always going to be mine. It's just so good, and Yuna is my life. I love her. 12 is a close follow-up. I also really enjoy 7 for the world building. The gameplay is less my favorite. I really like 10 and 12's gameplay, but I'm more of that like tactical, slow gameplay. I'm less into the live, whatever you call it, version. But I mean, other than some of the very early Final Fantasies, I've rarely played one that I didn't enjoy. 2 was a mess. 4 was a mess. But, they're a great series. If you've never tried them, you should definitely try one of them. You might find one you like. Let's see what our next best game adaptation of a book. First, let me look here. Ever played Fragile or Fantasy Online? I have not. I've been actually meaning to play Final Fantasy 14 because everybody and their brother is talking about how good it is. Even like real life friends I have are like, hey, you've got to play this game. It's like, gosh dang it. I lost a lot of time in my life in college to Lord of the Rings Online, and I worry about that happening again. I'm that kind of person. Best game adaptation of a book. I really feel this is an underrated area of video games. Movies, it's such a common thing to be like, oh, well, this book got popular, let's make it into a movie. And then you also have a lot of movie game tie-ins, like, oh, this movie did well, let's make a game. I don't think that line of, oh, this book did well, let's make a game out of it, really exists in the same way yet. And I don't think I can think of a book that was made into a game that hadn't been made into a movie or a television series first. So I feel like it's really underrated that we could do so much more with book universes in video games, especially like really big role-playing worlds. But I'm talking around it. The Witcher 3 is the best. I've played The Witcher 1 and I've played some of The Witcher 2. The third one's just brilliant. Everybody knows this, but it's mostly brilliant for how it brings to life this really intricate, huge book universe that I've read 7 of the 9 books, I think. I've read most of the books. There's so much history, so many characters, this huge web of intrigue and politics and history and worlds that The Witcher 3 handles so well, and then takes that world and builds on it to write its own stories, because The Witcher 3 isn't actually adapting anything from the books, it is a sequel to them. 1, 2, and 3 are all sequels to the game. I really could say all 3 are really great, because I like the first one and the second one too, but the third one's just the best made. They kind of figured out how to do it well. Parasite Eve was a novel. That actually, now that you say that, I almost forgot. That is probably the only one I can think of that went a book and then I don't think Parasite Eve became a movie before the game. I don't know. Shin Megami Tensei was based on a book, but that book became movies and stuff first. I'm 90% certain. In Japan. I'd have to check. But that might be the example that proves the rule. The Witcher just does so much with the universe of the books that makes them really, really fascinating in a really a grand way, and the DLCs of The Witcher explore things that the books just barely touch on. So you can take something like the vampires, that the brief character of Regis, who's in like 2 or 3 of the books, and then create 30 hours of content on this character who, is a vampire and a doctor and a really fascinating guy, and they make him kind of a companion in in the Witcher DLC. It's so good. Would I recommend getting into the books? Yes, they're very good. If you're not sure they're your thing, try the short story collections. There's a couple of them. They're very good. There's also a series of books that are more traditionally like read book 1, book 2, and they connect to each other. They are really good, really sad, really... It's just, if you liked the games, you'll probably like the books. If you like the show, you'll probably like the books. And I think as far as fantasy goes, at least in the English translation, they're very readable. It's not like Tolkien. Like, it's accessible. I would give it a shot if you like fantasy and stuff. Yes, there is a Lord of the Rings online. I don't know if it's still active, but it was 4 or 5 years ago. I can't imagine it's gone. I hope not. When am I gonna sneak? No, I will not. I've actually gotten requests to be supported by Raid Shadow Legends, but in the, you only get paid if people actually play the demo thing, and I ain't about that. I want to get paid up front. Thank you. Hello, Gandhi. Well, thank you, buddy. Hello, Min. What is my thought on Slitterhead? I know almost nothing about it. Other than, I think I heard the name is vaguely familiar. I don't really know anything other than that. Do they do audio? Who do audio? Oh, books? Probably. I'm pretty sure those books have audiobooks, for sure. Alright, best fanfiction video game. Final Fantasy VII Remake. Which I have streamed the whole entirety of on my channel, and you should check it out if you like that. So good. The thing that gets me about Final Fantasy VII Remake is it's literally a fanfiction trope. I mean, if you've been in the Final Fantasy VII fandom for a while, as I have been for many, many years, since Advent Children, so at least a decade, the story and the way that things go from Crisis Core, which is a prequel to Final Fantasy VII, where the characters are much happier and things have not gone wrong yet, and then they proceed to go wrong. And then Final Fantasy VII continues the story, and it has some tragic endings for various characters, as we all know. A lot of people pass away, bad things happen, and because Crisis Core was a prequel that showed things were cool at one point, around that time, you started to get a lot of time travel fanfics. I remember one called Green Eyes, where Cloud traveled back in time through the use of the live stream to fix things. It was so huge. All these fanfictions playing with the idea of what would happen if we messed with the Final Fantasy VII timeline, if we tweaked it here, we tweaked it there, and just differences all abound. I wrote one of my own. I've never finished it. One day I will have to. But it's just so fascinating to me that now here we are so many years later, and Square Enix took, I don't even know that they, I have no idea what Japanese fandom is like, so it just happened that they wrote a fan fiction of their own. Final Fantasy VII Remake is what would happen if someone went back in time and changed the timeline. It's a fan fiction in a video game, and I don't care what they do from now on. I don't care how ridiculous they get. I don't care if they undo Aerith's death, whatever. I just think it's fascinating that this is something that's happening and I get to see it and watch it with my eyes and know that it exists. And is also a well-made game that's fun to play. It's just great. Whatever you think about it, the original game's still always going to be there. It's, it doesn't destroy that or get rid of that or ruin your childhood. I just think it's fun and hilarious how the stars have aligned and this has happened. The fan fictions that I was reading 10 years ago are now realized in video game form. And how fun is that? I just love it. It's great. Okay, apparently it's a horror game that's been in that. Oh, are you talking about Slitterhead? That might be. I was glancing over the Game Award announcements and just, not really reading. I was like, oh, Alan Wake 2, cool, and, stuff like that. Hellblade 2, excited about that. Nothing really, surprising. But I'll have to look into that. Oh, is that their project? Okay, so that's the name of Toyama and Yamaoka's game. That is cool. I will have to look that up. Hello, B.O. I think that caught me up on questions. Okay. What was my... Oh, best horror game. Now, I did say I'm not going to talk about Silent Hill today because I do that all the time. So this is not Silent Hill. But to be honest, I didn't even really put Silent Hill in my thoughts for best horror game because honestly, it just doesn't horrify me. That's hard to explain. Silent Hill is a fascinating concept And to me, it really appeals to my like speculative nature of like what would happen if this kind of person went there or that kind of person, but it doesn't like scare me, which probably tells all of you what game would be frightening to me. It is Fatal Frame 3. Fatal Frame scares me. Silent Hill does not. It interests me. It does not frighten me. And this has a lot to do with gameplay differences and with content differences. It's very easy for Silent Hill and for Resident Evil to kind of be put into a box that says unrealistic, fantasy, fantastical. You know, zombies are not real. Silent Hill monsters are not real. I can kind of rationalize and separate myself from the fiction in a way that I can't with Fatal Frame, because Fatal Frame is based far more in reality. And I don't just mean that like ghosts theoretically are real, like you can't disprove ghosts, you can't prove ghosts, but also the traditions in the game are all from Shinto tradition. They are all very real Japan, well, not like real rituals, but like they're far more based in real Japanese lives than like Silent Hill or Resident Evil are. So on both levels, it's far more real. And then gameplay wise, you're forced to look at these terrible creatures, which are kind of human, not human, to be able to get rid of them. You're so weak. It just, it gets to me every time. It's one of the only horror game series that has actually frightened me on stream. I really can't think of anything else. As much as I love Silent Hill, I'm over people praising them as the best horror games in existence. Honestly, I think Silent Hill is a fantastic experience. It is a really unique one. It is a great storytelling vehicle. It's not the most frightening thing to me. It's not even really the most horrifying thing to me. I think, like, Silent Hill 2 is a great novella. Fatal Frame is frightening. Fatal Frame messes with me. And 3 is my favorite of them because it is the culmination of the first 3 games. It builds on the different themes. It pulls together characters from all the games in really interesting ways. And it also deals the most directly with the themes of Fatal Frame, which is letting go of dead loved ones. And the ending just hurts in a good way, where the main character is having to let go of this person that she blamed herself for his death and is having to accept that he has to go on now. And he's saying, you have to live for me because as long as you're alive, a piece of me is still alive. And that's just so, it's really good and really sad. And I love it. And thank you, Ratch, for the support. I'm trying to think of other, Hellblade did get to me a good, decent bit, but I don't know. I think Fatal Frame is still more frightening because in Hellblade, which is a game I think I have on my list here somewhere. Yes, I do. Hellblade, the enemy is within, and there's this sense of, like, peace that comes at the end where she kind of figures some things out for herself. It feels more cathartic than horrific, you know? So it's like you struggle and you suffer through it, but then at the end it's like, whew, you're good. In Fatal Frame, there's not that sense of, like, catharticness, I guess. Like, the enemy is always still, like, theoretically the ghosts are still out there, you know. It's not over. It's never over. Anyway, let's see. the best war simulator, Fire Emblem 3 Houses, which is also something that I streamed a while back, and it's one of my favorite video games of all time. I love the Fire Emblem series. Multiple games in that series could be on my favorite games of all time list if I wanted to be repetitive. I love Shadows of Valencia. I love Awakening. Fates is also Fates is also a game. Shadow Dragon. I love Shadow Dragon. I love the Game Boy version. It's just called Fire Emblem for Game Boy. I love that. And Fates is also there. But Fire Emblem is a series that has evolved over time to become really character-centric, where you had to have these big casts of characters in Fire Emblem because they started out being with permadeath. If you messed up a game and messed up a round, you'd lose characters, so you always have to have a lot more characters to fill in the gaps. And later, as characters were no longer, you could turn off permadeath, you still kind of had this big army of characters. And as they got bigger budgets and more time, they were able to expand and develop more on these characters and make them really fascinating, great characters, really great people. And Fire Emblem 3 Houses just masters this and creates this huge cast of characters that are all fascinating, interesting, unique. They have different portrayals and different views of the world that they're in, and the way they interact with one another is always fun, always entertaining, and it is it's not the first Fire Emblem game to have queer characters. I believe that was Valencia, and then I think Awakening might have had some options. Or am I thinking of the mod? I don't remember. But it has a huge amount of them, an unprecedented amount of these characters, because they can all develop relationships with each other and become friends or partners, and every single one of them has a same-sex option except for like 2. I literally created an Excel spreadsheet once to see this was true, and it is. You can, especially if you play as the Black Eagles, everybody can pair off. It's great. And it's just a really fun game with a really great story. I think some pieces of the story are weak because they do divide the story into 3 different houses, and not all of the house storylines work as well, in my opinion. They aren't all as developed. I think Black Eagles could have been longer, and I love that story, even though it was supposed to be the like extra bonus secret mission. I feel like it's the best one and should have been the main one, but I also love the other ones as well, even though the Lions interest me less just because of how it ends. I like the characters, I don't like the ending. It's just fascinating and super fun, and I can't wait to see where Fire Emblem goes from here, because that game was so good, and so was the DLC. I had a lot of fun with that. I need to actually go finish all the campaigns I haven't finished, because it's a huge game. I've only finished the Golden Deer, the DLC, the Black Eagles, and I've played like half of the Snow one. Yeah, there's 4 routes and the DLC. So technically you'd have to play the game like 5 times, especially because playing the DLC unlocks new content for the main storylines, because you get new characters that you can befriend and add to your team. It's wild. Oh, anyway, I really enjoy that game, and I will have to get back to it at some point. And actually, since we were just talking about Hellblade, best representation of mental illness. I see people talk about this game all the time for this reason, and I can't talk about it as a person with psychosis, because I don't have that. But as a person with mental illness, I still found myself relating in certain parts of the game to her experiences and the things that, like, the game has this voiceover of the voices that she's hearing, and specifically some that are actually directed at her or at you. And some of that dialogue just really hit home with me, talking about, like, how she feels, how the people around her treat her, and it's just really moving. And also, it is a narrative about loss and letting go, and the way that the game reveals what it is she's actually facing and how she has to let go to move on hits right in the heart. I mean, it's a great story of loss and overcoming abuse and ostracization and love. It's just so good. And if you've never played it, you definitely should. And it is pretty like, it can get you. It can get you. There's some moments. There are some creatures that I hate and don't want to look at. Ooh. All right. The best game at making me cry every damn time. This could also have been best visual novel, The House in Fata Morgana, another game I've streamed. It is less a visual novel and more an interactive book, which I think there's a term for that, and I don't remember the name of the term. You don't really make choices, and the handful of choices you do get are very slight. They don't make a lot of difference in the game. I think one of them's like if you pick the wrong one, oh, you die, you go back. Like, there's not a lot of interactivity. It is more you are placed in the position of the main character in order to be identified with them and experience their experiences far more fully. It uses gameplay, as much as it has gameplay, to embed you in the story, to connect you with it in a really powerful way that just makes this narrative hit home so much harder than it would in any other narrative. So even if you wrote this down as a book, it would not work in the same way, despite the fact that it doesn't have that much interplayability. It is the story of a character who has amnesia, has no idea who they are. They show up at this strange, mysterious mansion in the middle of nowhere, and they meet the maid, and the maid takes them into this journey of 3 different past lives of these people, and through going through them, you have to kind of figure out who's who, who are you the reincarnation of somebody? It's just, there's so much going on in it, and every time you think you kind of started to put things together, it'll throw you another curveball, and then it'll punch you right in the gut. And then again, and then again. And I have literally never cried so hard or been so moved by a story. Like, my voice is, it's so good. And speaking of good soundtracks, I listen to this soundtrack constantly, and it's great. And also, it hurts me. It's so fantastic. If you've never played it, gotta do it, gotta try it. It's on Switch now. Sit down and get yourself a box of tissues, because it's so good and so moving. There's also a bunch of DLC and stuff, which I think is like kind of fun if, not leave the universe yet. But the main core story is what really is just fantastic. It's absolutely fantastic. I hope that the people that made this make something else one day, because it's great. I love it. Best Lord of the Rings game. This was really just an excuse to talk about the Shadow of War, Shadow of Mordor series, because I love them, and I'm really sad that the legacy of that series is basically now just Warner Brothers sucks, because Warner Brothers did a lot of shitty stuff. Like, they have copyrighted the whole Nemesis system, which is freaking garbage. And when the sequel to the Shadow of Mordor came out, they shoved all this crappy pay-to-win stuff in it and loot boxes. So all that stuff overshadowed what was a really fantastic game, especially as a person who loves Lord of the Rings, which I think is what tipped it over the top for me. The gameplay's great, the Nemesis system is great, but its experience of Lord of the Rings, of the Tolkien universe, was what worked for me, because it's such a huge universe with so much history, so many characters, so many things you could do with it, and having a video game world for that it's just a great opportunity. Like I said earlier, I lost so many hours of my life in Lord of the Rings Online because it was really great to be able to explore Middle-earth, this place that I'd been going to in my fantasy daydreams ever since I was a kid. And the Lord of the Rings, War of Mordor, whatever, Shadow of Mordor was that for me again when it came around. And the sequel built up on it so much, and I'm still so mad that it got overshadowed. You freaking fight a Balrog on top of an Ent, and it's fantastic. Like, this game has so many cool set pieces in it, and it was so much fun, and nobody talks about it because it just completely got overshadowed. And now my mom is watching a movie with copyrighted music, so I'm just gonna keep... Okay, thank you! They keep singing that song every 5 minutes. It's just a great game, and I'm sad that nobody played it and nobody talks about it because of all the controversy that was around it, and Warner Brothers sucks. But if you never played the sequel, you should. If you liked the first one, if you haven't played the first one, try it. It's pretty affordable nowadays, especially if you like Lord of the Rings. If you don't, you might still enjoy it because the Nemesis stuff and things are really, really... It's a cool gameplay system. It's fun. I am also the writer of like half the fan fiction for Shadow of Mordor, for specifically one pairing. I'll let you guess who. I got really into that game when I was working. It came out when I was still working at the post office. I was in a mailroom, and I would take my lunch break and I would just write fan fiction on my lunch break. Oh man, I remember that. That was fun. I love those games. One of these days I'll stream them. One day. The best Germany time traveling video game, which is very specific, but I couldn't really think. I guess adventure game, maybe? The game is Shadow of Destiny, or Shadow of Memories, as it was known some other places. Which I actually just got this book from Japan, which I need to scan, because it actually has some art and interview stuff that hasn't been translated or shared anywhere yet. And it's actually a game that was like written and directed by a woman, Junko Kuwano, who's involved in Suikoden and a couple other things. It is another one of those kind of weird games that doesn't have a lot of gameplay. Like, it does have gameplay, but not in a lot of the traditional sense. A lot of the reviews at the time when it came out were like, this isn't even a video game. Because really what you do is you walk around this town and talk to people and figure out kind of weird little details that are going to help you solve puzzles, sort of. It's hard to explain. Your character dies, and is brought back to life by this homunculus who basically tells him, hey, somebody's trying to murder you. Better go solve your murder. And every time you figure out what's going on and you solve it, well, now something else has happened. You have to keep kind of traveling in time and changing time in order to change something that will happen later to stop something from happening. It's really fascinating and weird, and it deals a lot with like alchemy and some history, and touches on some of those like weird hyper-specific topics that I really like and enjoy. I streamed all of it in one go the first time I played it. It was that fun and that good, and one of these days we'll play it again. It is a weird game. It is a Konami game and actually has a few Team Silent members on it, if I remember correctly. I used to remember by name, but there's at least like 3, I think. I'll have to double check that, but it's from that same era of like Silent Hill 2-ish time. It is weird. It is fun. If you like adventure games and you like occult stuff, weird old PS2 gems, give it a try. It's fun. We're getting down to the end, I think. The best Kill God or Be God simulator. Shin Megami Tensei, of course. Which number? 4. I've played Nocturne. I've played 4. I've played the DS one, and I played another one that was one of the side games, and one of the old ones. I think like the first or second Shin Megami Tensei. I've only beaten 4 and 3, so really I was comparing between the two of those, and 4 is the one that I enjoyed the most. It was a game for the DS, and like all the Shin Megami Tensei games, basically you're in an apocalypse and things suck. In this one, you actually are a character from a kind of a paradise who descends down into the real world, Tokyo, and into the hell that this place has become because the apocalypse happened there, in order to solve some mysteries, figure some things out, and eventually the story becomes about why is there this paradise where nothing sucks up here and everything down here does suck? Why did that happen? And what are you going to do to fix it? Because the solutions always kind of suck. And it becomes about whether or not you're kind of going to give everybody a fair shake at survival, even though it's going to suck, or you continue to kind of let this corrupt system exist where some people get to live in peace and happiness and nobody else does, and it's really messed up. It was actually my first experience with Shin Megami Tensei. I think I might have played Persona 5 first. I think I did. And then I just dove through the fourth game on my DS like in a week or two. I was really obsessed with it. It's fun. It's creepy. It really is the best of kind of both worlds of RPG and horror elements, in the sense of like what you're experiencing and the choices you're making are horrifying. Like, oh God, this is bad. I became a big fan of the series, and I am super excited to play the HD update of 3 and the 5th game that I'm so happy finally is here. One day. All right. The sexiest revenge quest. We're going to finish up our discussion with another RPG series, Tales of Berseria. My favorite Tales of game. I've played 3 of them. Berseria, no, I actually 4, because I tried Zestiria. Vesperia is great. And what's the other famous one? I don't know. Vesperia I really like, but Berseria just is over the top fantastic in a way that surprised everyone. It was the first Tales game with a sole female protagonist, and it also has no love story, which is great. It's a tale of revenge where you play as this like real violent gothic chick whose outfit looks ridiculous, but I love it because it looks like a Hot Topic threw up and then got cut to pieces with scissors, basically. So it's stupid, but I do love it. She looks like such an edgelord. And the gameplay is your typical kind of Tales game, RPG gameplay, but like live action sort of. And the story centers on the main character kind of feeling monstrous because she's not human anymore, dealing with the feelings of being isolated from humanity and being a monster, being betrayed by someone she loved, who it turns out didn't necessarily betray her and did it for good reasons. And it kind of presents you with an ethical dilemma that made a lot more sense to me than some of the sometimes RPG dilemmas are like, really dumb, where it's like, well, obviously that's the bad choice, you know? Shin Megami Tensei is good at making, you know, more complex choices, and I think Tales of Berseria also did it pretty well, where it didn't feel clear-cut exactly. Like, I knew what the right choice was going to be, but I could see why the bad guys did what they did. It made sense. And it led to a really fascinating and kind of tragic ending, because Berseria is technically a prequel to a different Tales game where, you know, we already knew what had happened. So you were building to an ending that you knew was coming. And it was really, really good. And as far as female protagonist goes, Velvet is fantastic. She's a great female character. She's compelling. She's unique. She's fun. She's a great leader. And it's great to be able to play an RPG where the like core leader character is a woman. And a lot of the other characters are also, the dynamic characters are women. Like there's always the rival in the RPG game, and sometimes the rival becomes your friend. In this game, it is a woman, and she does join your team. There's just a lot of really fascinating and really well-developed characters in this game, and a lot of really great relationships, which again, aren't really built on romance, which is something that the two Tales games that I've played have done well. Vesperia also isn't really a romance, and I like that. I love Final Fantasy, but Final Fantasy leans really hard into the romantic storylines, and sometimes to the detriment of the friendship storylines, whereas Tales of games really feel like this is a team of best friends that are gonna save the world together, and it makes you feel really great. And it helps that Tales has all these little scenes where characters get to like just be friends, and it's just great. I love it. Did I get the right person? I can't tell if I did. There we go. Well, that was my last game that I could think of. I mean, I have other games I really love. Kodelka, obviously the Silent Hill series. I love 4. I've really come to love Origins now that I've finished it. Downpour. World of Final Fantasy is a fun Final Fantasy spin-off that has like Pokemon elements. I played a lot of Pokemon over the years. I wouldn't call it my favorite anymore, but I loved it as a kid. Kingdom Hearts, still haven't beat 3. Final Fantasies, I love all them. Yeah, I play a lot of different things, but these are probably the ones that when I think of like my favorite, the ones that I could sit down and yell at someone about for a couple hours, these are them. Love them. They're fantastic. So yeah, those are my Game Awards, which are obviously better than the official Game Awards because they are not sponsored by bigots or jerks. Because I'm awesome. Thank you for watching. Sorry this week hasn't been much for streaming because it is the holidays, which means my house has exploded for Christmas. Let me see if I can get a picture of... See, there's our wreath and more wreaths and more Christmas things to put up. And my mom built a Santa tree. It's very cute. And you should just see the rest of the house. There's just Christmas everywhere. So much Christmas. We go hard on the holidays. But it'll be back to normal probably by Monday, I think. Do I have last year's award stream somewhere? Yeah, it's unlisted somewhere in the videos. I will have to look and see if I can post it on the Discord because I know it's around there somewhere because I remember the Sephiroth thing, which is so cool. So I'll probably be back to normal on Monday. I don't know if I'll have a video this weekend because I haven't finished anything. So, eventually I'll get around to doing another video. Aw, yeah, I'm glad that you enjoyed it. Wasabi, it was very good. It was so good. So yeah, we do need to finish Dread Out, but I didn't feel like doing that today. So this is what we did. And I guess we'll finish it at some point. I kind of just want to play something else now because that fight was frustrating. Ugh. Anyway, if you've ordered a book from me, I'm working on fulfilling. I'm a little behind, but that's because the books took forever to get here and I had a lot of orders. So hopefully they will all be ready and finished by tomorrow. I think that's all the news and such. You know, I'm gonna keep on keeping on, you know, with irregular stuff this month since it's holidays and everybody's busy, but I'll still, at least every, you know, a couple times a week, we'll have something. So yeah, thanks again for being here. Thanks to all of our members. If you like what I do and you want to support it, please consider becoming one yourself. Links are in the description, and I will see you all next time. Bye.